bear with us. We also are going to do a drawing for my book, Fitness Wisdom, Little Book of Fitness Wisdom. That's a book that I wrote late last year, and so we're just rolling that out, and we wanted to give everyone here a chance tonight to enter into a drawing. We're going to draw 2 names, and 2 of you will walk away with a copy of that tonight. You can always purchase it as well from us for $10, and it's any of you who know us and know me and know MedFitness, you have a sense of how we approach things, and that's basically how we're going to do it tonight. But very optimistic, very simple in how we do things, really gearing it all towards a doable, manageable approach when it comes to health and wellness. So you'll have an opportunity to get that this evening too. And having said that, are you ready back there? Okay. Why don't we go live? Well, let's start by just sort of laying some foundations here in the world of weight management. In 2010, the Centers for Disease Control published the results of the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. It's a big, ongoing, federally funded study that looks at health habits and health outcomes in America. No big surprises. We discovered from this survey that 34% of American adults are considered overweight, and another 34% are actually considered obese. So we have over 68% of our country is considered overweight or obese. Now, you might just look at those numbers and say, oh, this is sort of scary. It's an epidemic that keeps getting worse. What's even more alarming is that the health consequences of that epidemic are moving much faster than the epidemic itself. What do I mean by this? Gaining weight in America is increasingly associated with unhealthy lifestyles. So these lifestyles, as we'll see shortly, are linked to all the major diseases in our healthcare system, all the chronic diseases that dominate the U.S. healthcare system. So what am I talking about here? Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and stroke are 4 of the big ones, just to name a few. According to the Centers for Disease Control, we now spend 75%, this is just stunning, 75% of our healthcare dollars are spent to treat and manage these chronic diseases linked to poor nutrition and inactivity. So as we go through things tonight, guys, yes, we're here to talk about strategies for sensible management of your weight, but I want you to keep one thing in the back of your head, and that is that losing weight and keeping it off, what we call weight management, is health management in America today. You cannot lose weight and do it by engaging in behaviors that don't relate to your health and keep the weight off. So when we look at the people who are out there who are succeeding, as we'll talk about tonight, they're engaged in health habits that are directly related to their health. So the upshot is they're managing their health. By the way, the side effect is you weigh less and you keep weight off over time. So there aren't these unrelated sort of components. We don't say, hey, if you want to lose 10 pounds, go out in the left field, do these things. And then when you want to get healthy, come over here. It isn't the case. The two are inextricably linked. So I want you just to keep that in mind. Weight management is health management. They're really one and the same. So having said that, we have a real simple approach tonight. We're going to basically look at 10 of the big questions in America. And we're going to ask the question, give you the answer, and then as always, we'll give you our recommendation. Okay, so a 3-step approach to running through things here. Feel free to chime in if you have a question. We'll take questions at the end as well, but let's get started here, guys. So I've just told you that almost 70% of Americans are overweight, so you have to ask yourself, is it possible to even lose weight and keep it off today in America? I will tell you that there are more and more health professionals and consumers out there who feel like it just can't be done. So I resign myself. I'm just going to continue to live my life and gain weight year after year. So is it possible to lose weight, keep it off? The answer is yes and no. On a cultural level, it is impossible. We will see things get a lot worse in the United States before we see anything get any better. And we've seen that for over 30 years now. Every 10 years, the NHANE data gets worse. The CDC publishes these outcomes. We see another jump. In the late 1990s, as expected, the federal government, we set goals to reduce obesity. down to 20%. What happened? We had a reverse increase equally that much higher, up towards almost 50%. So today we have the worst outcomes in the history of the world. And so on a national level, you will see your family, very possibly, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers gain weight over the next 10 years. You will probably see that happen. The flip side to that is that it is possible to succeed losing weight and keeping it off. We're going to talk about that. So paradoxically, no on a cultural level, yes on an individual level. And let me give you two big examples here. The biggest ongoing study of successful weight loss maintainers in the history, oh, that's not good. No. Little technical glitch there. There's my camera person. Okay. The biggest study on people who have lost weight that are keeping it off successfully in America is the National Weight Control Registry. A lot of you guys may know this study. Started at University of Colorado Health Science Center in 1994. We have over 6,000 people in this study ongoingly who've lost weight and are keeping it off. The average participant here has lost 65 pounds and has been keeping it off for 5.5 years. So would you say that if you can find 6,000 people in the U.S. throughout communities who have lost that much weight, that are keeping it off over time, those are people who are succeeding at losing weight and keeping it off? I don't think anyone would argue that. That's a database that keeps growing every year. We're learning a lot about successful weight management from that. But the other one is actually the National Health Project, which comes from a medical weight management company by the name of, oh my goodness. Okay. Maybe we won't be recording tonight, so let's see here. I'll just leave that right there. Okay. The other one is data from Health Management Resources. Some of you know that name. We're going to talk about them in a moment. But Health Management Resources is a company out of Boston who has been doing weight management, medical weight management for 27 years now. They recently sampled just over 2,000 clients of theirs in their weight maintenance program, which is the ongoing phase of their program, and looked at what was the average weight loss maintenance of actually 2,093 of their participants. And what they found is that 3.5 years out, average weight loss maintenance was just over 40 pounds. So again, in the United States, if you are keeping off 40 pounds 3.5 years later or more, that by any reasonable definition would be considered success, because on average, what happens to weight on average? If you just look at the average person, what's happening? It's going up, yeah, they're gaining weight, So here's two big data sets that are representative of very successful people. So I'm here to say that despite the sweeping trends, which just seem terrible out there, you can lose weight, you can keep it off, but again, you're going to have to go against the grain and not do what the rest of the culture is doing, as we'll see in just a moment. So, so don't let the trends stand in your way. That's really our recommendation, is do not let the fact that there are people around us gaining weight all the time, do not let that interfere with your thinking and your actions about what you want to have happen with your own weight. So, by the way, it was a few years ago that scientists coined the phrase secondhand obesity. Does anyone know what secondhand obesity is? We know what secondhand smoke is, right? What's secondhand smoke? That's if I'm smoking and that smoke comes over to you and you breathe in that smoke. We know that can be damaging to your health, right? So secondhand smoke is a risk factor for poor lung health. But what is secondhand obesity? This is interesting. Secondhand obesity is the fact that as more and more people are heavier, there are fewer and fewer people that aren't overweight. So what happens is you begin to adopt the health habit and the lifestyles of people around you. We've all experienced this at some level before. So it's almost a behaviorally infectious condition. So you want to be aware of the fact that I can lose weight, I can keep it off, but recognize many more people in my life will likely gain weight in the next 5 to 10 years. So, okay. Question number 2. What's the best diet? How many of you have walked through the bookstore and checked some of the recent bestsellers to see what's on the list these days? Every year there are dozens of new diet books. There's never a shortage of sort of new ideas, new concepts. But what I want to say just off the cuff is that every diet in the history of the world since the 17th and 18th century, which is really when diet started, is a different version of the same thing. It's basically a structured, low-calorie food plan that has a different angle or a different emphasis to it. I'm either going to cut out carbohydrates, or I'm going to cut out dietary fat, or I'm going to only eat a certain food, or I'm going to have the grapefruit diet, or whatever it is. So they're all basically structured food plans with slightly different angles to them. So if you look at the research, who has produced the best outcomes long term? Well, it's easy. It's Health Management Resources out of Boston, Massachusetts. When you look at the published research, their outcomes far exceed anyone's data anywhere on the planet. It doesn't matter who you look at. Their weight loss data averages just over 60 pounds per person in the program. Their what we call self-guided program, where you just kind of follow the program out on your own, beats all the self-guided data. They've published results in almost every major medical journal in the world. So if we just compare apples to apples and say, hey, here's a good study, here's a good program from this university, what outcomes have you demonstrated? Nobody has come close to demonstrating the outcomes that HMR has demonstrated over a 27-year period. So we have significant weight loss, and we also have, on average, about 65 to 71% of weight loss maintained 1.5 years out. So again, that's people in the program doing that largely, but they do have self-guided options where someone just follows their program on its own as well, without help as well. By the way, that set that I just shared with you from the National Weight Control Registry, about half of those people are people in the HMR program. So we have the biggest database in the history of the world. A lot of those folks have done things on their own, but a lot of them have done it through a program. So if we just look at diets as a whole, HMR has published the best outcomes by far. I know it sounds like a commercial. This is actually why we choose to use their program at MEDFITNESS. But I will say that it is, as many of you know, the only program that we've used for over 20 years with our system here. And it's really because they produce the best outcomes. Their average weight loss in clinic is about 3 times greater than the best commercial data out there. So whether you compare them to Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, any of those outcomes. So we're certainly not opposed to other methods of helping people to lose weight, but they definitely are generating the best results when you compare them to anyone else out there. So what really, what's our recommendation there? Avail yourself to that technology. Apply the things that they know make a difference with your health and your weight, as we'll see shortly in just a few moments. But some of you have had more experience with that program than others. So the best data is HMR. By the way, what's the basic tenets of their program? Structure, a focus on whole fruits and vegetables, and using meal replacements strategically to cut calories. That's it. And physical activity. These are the variables that for almost 30 years now, every study says when you do these things, you lose more weight and you keep off more weight over time. It's been painful for me as a dietitian to have to acknowledge that free choice diets don't work for most people. In other words, if we just sort of say, hey, navigate the world on your own and try to be cautious and careful and try to cut a few calories, most people are unable to do that. And we're seeing every year more and more people unsuccessful. So it's about having structure, specificity, and adding more foods that are low in calories so that we can fill up on those. And we'll say a little more about that in just a moment. So the HMR has produced the best outcomes over time. Here's a great question. What's the best way to take weight off your waist? Everyone wants to take a few inches off their waist. The answer is simple. Lose weight. Now, let's move on to the next question. Let's talk about this for a second. When you look at exercise, there is no site-specific effect to exercise. People think there is. People say, oh, let me go do some crunches because I'm concerned about reducing my waist. The only site-specific effect that exercise has is with carbohydrate metabolism. In your muscle, carbohydrate is stored as what we call glycogen. It's just a stored source of sugar. And so if I'm exercising my biceps, doing bicep curl, the glycogen in that muscle is getting used up. Right? If I'm working my abdominal wall, doing crunches, the glycogen is getting used up. But there's no effect to the fat tissue in that area, what we call the overlying fat pad, the area that we want to diminish and shrink, is largely unaffected by targeting exercises. So I could do sit-ups till the cows come home and see no real change in the fat between the muscle and skin. We call that subcutaneous fat. What does impact that is systemic weight loss. So this is sort of the inequality of weight loss in the universe. When we gain weight, it is site-specific, especially as we age. We tend to gain weight in the trunk more so, and there's some hormonal reasons that contribute to that. But as you lose weight, weight comes off from your body as a whole. So I can't say, hey, let's get the hips tightened up a little bit, so let me lose 5 pounds. Women's, you hear this all the time, right? Gee, my chest is getting smaller, my face is shrinking, it's not coming off where I want it to. And the same thing for men. Now, it doesn't mean you can't lose weight in that area, but systemic weight loss as a whole is the only way to shrink your waist. So when we look at exercise, what's much more relevant than sit-ups or crunches or twists or side bends is just burning more calories. You've heard me talk about this before. Both the National Weight Control Registry and HMR data, those people burn on average over 2,000 calories per week. So this is the imperative that we always recommend. Track your physical activity calories, get over 2,000. That gives you a fighting chance to be able to bring your waist down and or prevent weight gain in the abdomen over time. And the other thing is, it's really all about what you eat. 2/3 of your success is your food, about 1/3 of it at best is your exercise. So Americans tend to get this wrong as well. We like to focus all of our energy on exercise and sort of dig into that, sink our teeth into it, and really not look as closely at what we're eating. But when we look at the math, it's very clear. More than half, 2/3 or more, is linked to what we're eating. About 1/3 or so is due to our exercise. So this doesn't diminish the role exercise plays, it's critical. But you can clearly work very hard, Tom, do everything right, have your diet be off kilter enough that you could actually be gaining weight. Has anyone ever had that before? You're exercising and you're actually gaining weight? So it's happened. So we see that, that's in the literature. It's not a surprising phenomenon. So it really is about what you eat, but you can't spot reduce. There's no site-specific effect to exercise. If there was, we'd all have lean faces from chewing all day, but that's just not the case. So best way to take inches off your waist is to focus on overall weight loss, what you eat, and burning 2,000 calories or more per week. Okay. Number 4, does it get any easier? It does. It actually does. If you focus on skill development. Now, when was the last time someone had a dream and went to bed at night and you sort of dreamed about having some broccoli and eating some apples and you woke up and you weighed less? Has that happened to anyone recently? Yeah. All the time. All the time. It just happened today. The thing about weight management that we sometimes miss is that it is a skill to lose weight and keep it off in America. In other words, you have to actually go out and engage in behaviors that our culture doesn't support, right? Have you taken a drive down Randall Road in recent days? Any city on Randall Road, you have Baskin-Robbins and Dunkin' Donuts together, right? As though they had to form an alliance to make donut consumption easier in America. You can go across the street, this is in Elgin, and get steak burgers at Steak and Shake 24 hours a day. They never close their doors either. If that's not enough, you can drive down a few doors and get premium ice cream at Oberweis for 700 calories a cup without ever stepping out of your car. This is all 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, guys. So we're telling you, go out, cut calories. Do it in a world that does not agree with the word low calorie. So it takes not only knowing what to do, but you've got to have proficiency at pulling off these behaviors day after day after day. So if you approach weight management from a skill standpoint, knowing that I've got to practice these behaviors, the more you practice them, the more skilled you become, the more tolerant you become. A quick example here is when I was growing up, I've got 3 brothers, and we would ride our bikes in the summer, or maybe walk to the pool, you know, pretty much every day. And it could be 90 degrees out. And the first thing we do when we get there is we check the water temperature, right? It could be blazing hot. And you say to yourself, gee, I hope the water isn't too cold today. Well, we're going there to cool off, but we still are obsessed about the water temperature. So we see what the water temperature is, and then you get into the pool, what do? You walk, you walk into the pool, and you do what we call a toe touching exercise. You dip your toe in the water, right? And sometimes it feels really cold. It's like, my goodness, I gotta wait to warm up to this idea of getting to the water. Yet it's 93 degrees outside. So you touch your toe, it's still cold. Your friends, your brothers jump in the water. They're swimming. They're in the water for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. They're saying, hey, come on in. The water feels good. It's actually not that bad. So you come back up, you touch your toe, and it's still bitter cold. It's like ice water. You finally make the decision to jump in the water, right? You get in. The first few seconds, painfully cold. What am I thinking? This is not, this is not fun. So a minute goes by, 2 minutes, 3, 5 minutes, you're saying to yourself, yeah, this does actually feel pretty good. It's actually good. It's refreshing. Has the water temperature changed at all? It hasn't. What's changed? Well, your tolerance for the exact same set of circumstances that were very painful a few moments earlier. So we draw the same analogy with skills. We're asking you to get into a behavior that maybe feels a little uncomfortable sometimes, or feels a little uncomfortable initially, but stay with the behavior. How many of you know this to be true? If you stay with the behavior, it does become more doable. I'm not saying you necessarily like it, but we're saying that your tolerance for that behavior goes up. So it simply becomes a routine, automatic, decision-free part of your life. That's where success lives and breathes no matter what the behavior is, guys. You can't say to yourself, well, I'll succeed with my health once I like eating apples. Well, that may never happen. Or I'll succeed once I like to go take a walk when it's 30 degrees. That may never happen either. But in staying with the behavior, it changes, and your response to that behavior changes also. So if you view it as skill development, you'll approach it with this practice mindset. And by doing that, we do gain tolerance, and it does become probably more doable is the best word. Easy probably isn't the right word, but more doable and manageable over time is a better way probably to describe that. So we'd say yes, it does get more doable. I actually, we sometimes say you don't have to worry about these behaviors unless you're eating. So for those of you who like to eat, you might consider practicing them on a daily basis. So, okay, number 5, do I have to count calories? The answer is no, but they do matter. This is the one that's been argued for a long time in the United States. Calories do matter. Let me give an example here. The problem today when it comes to calories is that nobody knows calories. So I've got a nice little bran muffin here, and what I'd like to do is just have, do a little field research here. We're not going to eat it, but I'd like just 3 of you to hold it in your hand for just a moment. Don't say anything, but just give, in your mind, just come up with your best guess for what you think the calorie consequence of this innocent muffin might be here. So Bill, let's put it in your hand here. We'll include the men here. We don't want to discriminate. Okay, all right, so there's one scientist, another scientist here. All right, brain, and who else wants to get involved in this? Okay. Jane, I know you're, you might not be a good person to do this with, but go ahead. Just in your head, okay? All right. So here we have, let's imagine 3 people who say, I want to lose some weight. And we tell them, hey, it's a good idea to keep records. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Because all the research says people who keep records do better. Okay, let me keep records. I'll track what I'm eating. They all come back to the same class. They all tell me the following week, yes, on Thursday night I had a bran muffin and I recorded it at X calories. Let's find out what the estimations are on the calories here. Who did I give it to? Bill? Okay, yeah. What would you say, Bill? 500. 500, okay. We have a guess at 500?
I was going to say 4 1/4.
4 1/4, okay.
450.
450, okay. All right. So you guys blown my experiment. All right.
We're supposed to set lower.
Yeah, it's a 5-ounce muffin. Muffins are 100 calories an ounce on average, of course, bran muffin. We think of bran muffins in a generally healthy concept. It's not junk food per se. But the point here is that even with this small controlled experiment, we have maybe a 100-calorie variation with one food. If I take that 20% error and I multiply it across the day and I multiply it times 7 days, we can get gargantuan variations in terms of calorie reporting. Even the studies on dietitians, when you ask them to record what they eat, they're way off in terms of tracking the actual calories. So it's tough, not because we don't know that maybe muffins are 100 an ounce, but because it's tough to calculate the portions, especially in today's environment where what directions are portions going? They're getting bigger. They're getting bigger and bigger. So it's really about training our eyes. So calories do matter. We don't necessarily recommend that you record calories all the time, but what you have to do is engage in behaviors that help you pull calories down. There's no arguing that. No one will say, hey, the key is we've got to get your calories up over 5,000. Then the weight's really going to come off, and you're going to see how much weight you can really lose.
I want 10 books.
10 books, exactly right, exactly right. So the to-do here, guys, is very counterintuitive, very un-American in a sense, is to eat more, to physically get full on lower calorie foods. Now we all know what it's like to have the blowout Thanksgiving meal or the weekend dinner out with friends where you're just kind of pretty full because you had appetizers, drinks, main course, dessert, etc. We all know that feeling of being full. So we're skilled at being full on high calorie foods. Would you say? No one here, if I gave you the assignment, no one is going to say, hey, I just don't understand the concept. Where can I get enough food to get full? So we could go home tonight and do that on our way home. But what doesn't seem sort of natural is the idea that being full is okay. It's being full on 5 to 15 calories an ounce instead of 100 to 150 calories an ounce. That's the shift that needs to happen in America. When you look at the people who succeed at losing weight, they have significantly increased the volume of food they eat in that 5 to 15 calorie an ounce category. So I know everyone tells me, as a dietitian, I've heard this since the day I was born. Oh yeah, I love fruits and vegetables. I eat them all the time. Good. Then eat more of them. No, it's more than just saying, do I like them? Do I eat them regularly? What percent of our calories come from fruits and vegetables in America, do you think? Yeah, it's about 5 to 7%. So it's a really low number. So we eat a small quantity of our calories come from these really low calorie foods. So to succeed, you've got to beef that up because satiety, fullness, is the main marker for determining whether or not we'll stop eating. We have a pharmaceutical industry based on this, right? You've heard me talk about this before. Developing drugs to have you be full sooner or less hungry in between meals. So being full, guys, is okay because it gets you to eat less of the high-calorie, real-world foods. But we can do it by driving up apple consumption, driving up green beans, baked potatoes, etc. That's another one. Baked potatoes at 20 calories an ounce, our consumption has decreased consistently over the last 20 years. What we're eating more of are the fried potatoes and potato chips, right? Fried potatoes, you go from 20 an ounce up to 100 for fried potatoes, and then you go from 100 to 150 for potato chips. So it's not like people are, you know, they don't go into McDonald's and say, I'll take 3 baked potatoes on the side. It's, I'll have the large fries, or I'll have the potato chips with my sandwich today. So it's about getting full on lower calorie foods. It clearly is about eating more, as counterintuitive as that seems. So yes, calories count. You don't have to count them. You just need to fill up on more of those low calorie foods, okay? Number 6, should I use over-the-counter supplements? If you walk into Jewel or Roscoe or any pharmaceutical or Walgreens, any drug store, you see a long shelf of all kinds of appetite suppressants, metabolism boosters, products that are designed to give you the edge or give you a metabolic boost and really help you in the weight loss sort of journey. The short answer is we don't recommend those products, largely because when you look at the samples of people who've lost weight and are keeping it off, no one reports using them, despite the billions of dollars that is spent on marketing them. You know, even the pharmaceutical companies have shifted their stance on this. You guys remember in the, gosh, it would have been in the early 90s is when drug therapy was just going wildfire in America, and everyone had to have a drug to lose weight. And that started to slow down, and we saw adverse side effects and unhealthy consequences to certain medications. Well, now the drug companies have figured out that even the best case scenario is that these are an adjunct to healthy lifestyles. So even the most powerful pharmaceuticals, these companies will tell you, they're just a small piece of the side with a strong, healthy lifestyle. That's the way you have to use them. So when we look at the less studied over-the-counter products that require no evidence to be sold for effectiveness, completely unregulated industry, we don't see that there's any good reason to say, hey, you need to be using this product to actually lose weight and keep it off over time. Largely because there's a lot of easy wins. There's just way too many easy wins out there, opportunities to do better without having to use something that we don't have any strong data to support over time. I mean, the ads are unbelievable. They're so sophisticated that it's difficult to discern, is this really something that I should be using? Time out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. best time to exercise. There's a lot that's written about this, and so what I'm going to say is the best time is in the morning and in the evening. So this is a behavioral issue. What we see is that the biology of morning exercise is basically identical to the biology of evening exercise. It isn't as though a brisk 10-minute, 20-minute walk is different at 6 p.m. than it is at 6 a.m. There really aren't any meaningful changes in human physiology during the day like that. But what we do see is that exercise changes brain chemistry. We've talked about this before. We have an author from Harvard University who has just written a book. I believe the title is Spark, and he writes all about the impact that exercise has on altering brain chemistry and why it's critical and important for improving function and decision making. We also know that the Journal of Psychosomatic Research a few years back published an analysis of over 80 studies and said that inactivity produces abnormal stress on brain chemistry. So if we know that that changes brain chemistry, we know that it changes our decision making and our thinking, it would make sense that for the most part, if you're trying to modify your eating behaviors and you're trying to quote unquote stay on track with this way of living that is unsupported by America, it would make sense that you get this sort of biological kick to your thinking early in the day to build what we call momentum and synergy. So what we just noticed anecdotally, and there isn't a lot of hard data, is that people will tend to tell you, when I get my activity done earlier in the day, there's no hard definitive time, but let's just say the first half of the day, it tends to be that for those folks, they're a little more compliant long-term because as the day goes on, you have more opportunity to negotiate your way out of a behavior. Now, having said that, I'm an evening exerciser, and I've been that way for many, many, many years. So you have to look at your individual style here, guys. It does come down to compliance. People ask this all the time, you know, what's the best time to exercise? So it really boils down to when can you get it done and get it done consistently. And so for some folks that is in the first half of the day, for others it might be in the evening, but we do know that almost everyone tells you once they get the behavior done, they get this sort of spill of positive thinking that can infect other decisions and food decisions during the day. So we've coached thousands of people over the years who sort of speak to it this way. Exercise is the glue that holds everything together for me. So if you want more of that sort of positive prodding and poking, you might even consider doing divided bouts throughout the day. You might do a 15-minute bout in the morning, get a positive kick from it, get a 15-minute bout later in the day, get a positive kick. Again, more for behavioral reasons than biological. I know the exercise world likes to debate this and split hairs over calorie burning and all that kind of stuff, but it's largely getting the behavior done and doing it in a way that supports you with other productive decisions over time. So you really want to customize this one and find out what works best for you. I think our manager is a morning exerciser, if I'm not mistaken. Joanne, is that right? Morning exerciser. Okay, good. Question 8, how do you increase a slow metabolic rate? How many of you think you have a slow metabolic rate or you had a slow metabolic rate at some point? Right. Okay. All right, maybe. This is a common one. Most people, when surveyed, will tell you that I feel like I've done things to myself that have lowered my metabolic rate. So what do we know about metabolism and what can we do to beef it up a little bit? Well, metabolic rate has really 3 parts to it. There's basal metabolism, which is cellular respiration just to keep you alive. Heart beating, lungs functioning, cells turning over in the GI tract, etc. Just normal life-sustaining functions. That's basal metabolic rate. You can't do a whole lot to modify that. Then there's the thermic response to feeding. When you eat food, metabolic rate goes up. We've all heard this, right? There's mechanical, thermal, enzymatic digestion that's needed to break food down. That takes energy, so that does require energy. It's a small amount of the total though, guys. It's less than 10%, it's probably 5 to 7% of the total is linked to feeding itself. Now, wouldn't it be nice if I could just eat and raise metabolic rate enough that I could lose weight? And then lastly, we have the thermal response to physical activity. Okay? Moving your body, taking a walk, doing a workout. That raises metabolic rate. We know that. Most people know this. So you've got these three pieces to the pie. Basal metabolism, the response to eating, and the response to moving your body through space, so to speak. The one that we have the most control over here, obviously, is the thermic response to physical activity. So what's the best way to boost that up as best we can? Two things. Again, you kind of know this, but let me reinforce some key points here. We want to work the big muscles on our body when we lift weights, and then we want to go work the big muscles on our body when we do what a lot of people would call aerobic activity. We just call it physical activity in general. So what do I mean by the big muscles on my body? If you're looking at your strength workout, guys, the key exercises are the exercises that work your legs, chest, and back. Those are the big muscles. If you look at our studio, the single most potent exercise for raising metabolic rate, as you could probably guess, leg press. It uses the most muscle tissue, it gets the biggest kick in metabolic rate, and it builds the most muscle tissue because you're stimulating large muscle groups, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quadriceps. It's a lot of muscle mass. So we want to ensure that we're working hard on those big muscle exercises, chest press for the chest, rowing for the back. So you don't want to spend 6 hours working your biceps, an hour and a half working your calves, 2 hours working your abs. That's not going to have the same effect on metabolism as really stimulating those big muscles. So if you target those guys in your strength workout, you guys are all pretty dialed in at MEDFITNESS because we already do this. But then go use those muscles to be active. So again, what's a good example? Walking. In the National Weight Control Registry, the #1 form of activity in that registry is walking. Why is it a good one? Because I can burn up a lot of calories. I'm weight bearing, I'm upright, I'm supporting my body weight, I'm using my legs. Biking's another good example. So don't go in and do the arm ergometer for an hour and a half and just work your arms. Go for the big muscles. An elliptical exercise is another good one. Legs and arms. So target those big muscles in the strength workout, then use them through physical activity. I know I've said this before and I'll just reinforce it. Fitness professionals have tended to over-report the benefits of strength training from a metabolic standpoint. You can read books in fitness circles that'll tell you if you just go lift weights, for every pound of muscle you add, you're going to burn 100 more calories per day. That really isn't supported by any good science. The data really shows it's drastically less than that. Where you get the benefit is when you use the muscle. So if I train Maureen and I add some muscle to her body, there is some increase in metabolism, but where she really gets the kick is then by going out and harnessing those muscles through some sort of form of activity. Walking, whatever it is, chores at home, you name it, but using those big muscles once you have built them up versus just sitting around doing nothing. So, okay, so it's a two-step punch. Train the muscles, build them up, then go use them through some form of activity. Simpler than we've been led to believe, but still relevant. By the way, some of you have heard me talk about this thing called spontaneous physical activity. People who have greater muscular fitness are much more active spontaneously than people who don't have good muscular fitness. What's the one thing that improves? When you work out at MEDFITNESS or anywhere, when you work out, what's one thing that we're sort of attentive to in your workout? We're constantly discussing or measuring or showing or addressing what? Your weight, right? How much weight are you lifting? How did that weight feel? Was it hard? Do we need to go up 2 pounds? Where are you at? You just hit 500. Congratulations. So as you build strength, right, it's a good marker for increases in lean mass. And so people who are stronger tend to be more active all day long, intentionally and unintentionally. So it's formal and informal activity. And we've seen this study and other scientists have looked at it, so that's a good bonus to building your strength. Okay. How can I stay motivated? Number 9, how can I stay motivated? How can I stay on track? It's a big one in America today. If there was a pill for motivation, we would sell it to you. I guarantee it. Here's the answer. The single most important thing you can do to stay motivated is to look at your success. If you ask someone who's trying to lose weight, let's say I'm coaching you and we're going to weigh you in. And you just an average person off the street, and we say, hey, Pam, how's it going? How'd the week go? Most people spontaneously go into an epic saga on what's not working in their life. They just, by default, will talk for hours about what's not working. That doesn't help people to be more successful versus identifying, hey, let me tell you about the things that worked well this week and the strategies that were useful and how we're going to ramp these up this next week. So I'm just sort of disclosing something we already know, sort of an element of a little bit of human nature. It's easy to drift into what's not working when we sort of look at our life, and especially we'll look at health habits. You know, it's easy to say, I've been overeating for 3 days straight, I don't know how to break it. So it's an easy pattern to get into. So to pull out of that is to look at your success. So I want to share with you a quick study that was funded by the National Institutes of Health, conducted by the University of Missouri, published in the American Journal of Public Health. They looked at 99,000 adults and wanted to look at things that were linked to increased motivation with staying on track with health habits. You know what they found? What did people say helped them to stay motivated and helped them to stay focused on higher levels? In this case, it was physical activity, was the behavior they're looking at. Tracking what they were doing, keeping a little record of what they were doing. So writing it down was the single most potent thing they could do to, without even telling them to, keep them more motivated, more on track. Now, granted, in the studio, we track everything for you, so you're not doing the writing of your workout necessarily. But outside of that, taking a walk, whatever it is, keeping a record of something that you do is the most potent way to increase compliance with that behavior. It can be any method you like, guys. Those of you who know me, I've been keeping records now for, gosh, maybe it's 22 years. And I remember back in the late 80s, my coach, the person who was coaching me on my health habits at the time, said, hey, what's it going to take for you to keep records? You know, I was tracking what I was eating and my physical activities, part of working, where I was working, and because I had been unsuccessful. It was like a month or two, and I just wasn't getting the job, and I thought, when am I going to get my head screwed on straight? And I looked at this gal and I said, it's got to be easy, it's got to be convenient, I got to have it right at my fingertips. Otherwise, I'll never sit down at the end of the day and try to reconstruct what I ate. So what I started doing was buying shirts with pockets so that I could have my records right here. I actually went so far as to, I've actually found t-shirts that had not only pockets, but I had pockets sewn on my sleeve on some things. I don't know why I chose the sleeve, but so I've got sweatshirts and whatnot with pockets out here. And so for over 2 decades, I've monitored my health habits. This is my current record keeping system, which is just the HMR summary sheet that we use. In less than 60 seconds a day, I can check off my behaviors, my fruits and vegetables, my physical activity, monitor my weight. My goals are on the back, my strong start day is right there. This stays with me day in, day out. Sometimes it's tucked in my wallet or my lower pocket, but it's with me all the time. It is a powerful, powerful motivator for getting me to do higher levels of health habits that are tough to pull off in our culture today. So less than 60 seconds a day of record keeping, gargantuan benefits to driving health habits that we know are linked to better health. So the to-do is to track the behaviors that matter. So whether or not you track meal replacements, fruits and vegetables, no one can argue. Physical activity, no one can argue. Weight change, no one can argue. People who look at their weight on the scale at least once a week do better than people who do not look at their weight. You know, it's just like looking at the checking account. If you never look at the checking account, you might have some surprises at the end of the month or end of the year. So, okay, so track what you're doing, keep it simple. By the way, how much do you think this is worth to me? You know, this little piece of paper once a week. I organize it. It takes a minute to organize it. Little piece of paper costs, I don't know what this costs, maybe 1 cent. whatever it costs. What is this worth in the world of health management today when fruit vegetable consumption is higher, calories are lower, physical activity is higher, body weight is lower? Well, what is this really worth? I'm guessing no less than $10 million to me, no less than $10 million. But I will have this piece of paper and I will do this week after week. How did I get into it? Well, of course, this is my life's work. It's what I do. I did it to be able to role model and to be able to coach my clients effectively. But now I see as an adult who's 47, if this falls off for me, my behaviors come down. If I want to ratchet them back up, get back to some monitoring, look at it more attentively, 60 seconds a day. So I cannot tell you how critical this is. I've talked to a lot of people, and records it's more effective than coaching. It just is potent. So whatever works for you guys, your smartphone, a calendar, an Outlook planner, whatever it is, get some feedback on the key behaviors and make sure that you're looking at those variables over time to stay on track with them, okay? Okay, and then lastly, how do you break through a plateau? You know, this is a big one. All right. I think we're gonna have to skip this one tonight. Yeah. What is a plateau really? A plateau is just sort of biology and psychology converging when it comes to weight management. If you say I want to lose 30 pounds and you start losing weight, a couple things are working to your disadvantage as you lose weight. As your body mass goes down, guys, your need for calories goes down. 10 to 12 calories per pound on average for the typical person. So if you lose 10 pounds times 10, you now need 100 calories less per day. So your calorie needs go down. A lot of people call this metabolic rate, but it's just a decrease in body mass, which is linked to a decrease in calorie needs. So as you lose weight, you require fewer calories. And then as you lose weight, you burn fewer calories because that's physics too. If Bill weighs 10 pounds less, it doesn't take as much energy to walk a mile 10 pounds less as it did 10 pounds heavier. So as you're losing weight, your exercise is burning fewer calories because you now need less weight. What you were eating is producing less of a calorie shortage every day. Then on the scale, the rate of weight loss slows down, so you see less reinforcement, which is the strongest predictor of people staying with behaviors. You know, I can get you to do anything if you're reinforced enough with that behavior. Now, we can get you to go out and do who knows what. As long as there are enough benefits associated with that behavior, you do it. Well, now all the hard work you're putting into weight loss, it's slowing down, it's slowing down, it's slowing down. So there's fewer pats on the back, fewer people acknowledging. So what's happening? Biology, psychology coming together, slowing down weight loss, getting you to what we loosely refer to as a plateau. So is it possible to sort of break through a plateau and keep going? And again, go back to what we said about skill. The answer is yes. Think of it this way. If you have a football team that's winning all the time, and all of a sudden they have 3 losses, what do? They look at the films, they check their data, they analyze things, they study it a bit, prepare for the next competitor, look at what's going on with them. So they basically look at the behaviors needed to get the victory in the upcoming week. We have to do the same thing with weight management, guys. As your weight is coming down, and you're burning fewer calories, and you're a little less reinforced because you're only losing a quarter pound, half a pound instead of 2. You've got to focus on the same behaviors. We call this third alternative thinking. Here's where people get derailed. Because weight loss is slowing down, they think there's a third alternative in the universe that doesn't exist. There's only 2. You do the behavior, you get the result. You don't do the behavior, you don't get the result. There isn't a third alternative bar where you go out into left field and contemplate what to do and success spontaneously shows up. That's where people get derailed. They think, oh, I'm eating better, I'm exercising, weight loss has slowed down. Gee, let me go do something different now that is unknown to mankind and see if I can. No, it doesn't. Success doesn't come that way. So it's about staying with the same behaviors, but looking at your data, seeing what you're doing that's working, continuing to practice, and often practicing at higher levels. You know, we can relate this to life in a lot of different areas. You know, if the business has a slowdown, you don't say, gee, you know what we need to now do is we need to decrease sales. instead of increased sales. Let's see how that works. Well, that's a disaster, but this is how most people approach their health habits. Let me stop eating these pesky apples and start having brownies and see how that stimulates weight loss. So don't go down the path of third alternative thinking. It's about going to the behaviors that were relevant from the very beginning, continuing to track them, and look at maintaining your compliance and even practicing some new, maybe unfamiliar strategies to stay with those behaviors. In fact, one thing we do know when we look at this concept of dieting endurance, which is just your ability to stay with a structured plan, is that having more strategies in your toolkit, so to speak, having more options in terms of easy to eat, good for you foods, people do much better than having fewer. This is why my coach, yes, I have a coach, is constantly pushing me to try new behaviors and to do new things, to stretch me into what we call my stretch zone, so that my skill set is as broad and complete as it can be given the world that we live in. You know, when was the last time you went to a party and someone was raving about the apple slices that you brought, you know, I mean, or they asked you, happens all the time, you know, they asked you, when you arrived there, they said, hey, Bill, good to see you. Before we get into this great party tonight, have you exercised today? You know, I mean, these conversations don't happen in our culture. We say, hey, Bill, get a drink for my buddy. What's going on here? So we just want to appreciate the slippery slope of our society and know that keeping the records, looking at the behaviors, staying focused is what there is to do. If there was a simple, pain-free way to lose weight, you know, we wouldn't be here tonight. But again, the good news is it can be done. There's data to show that people are out there succeeding every day. This group right now, I'd say you guys are ahead of the curve. To get a group focused for an hour on a Thursday night, discussing, thinking, talking about this is a success in and of itself. So having said that, let's go ahead and raffle off the muffin. Joanne has our bag in the back. I want to raffle off our 2 books. Okay? So, all right. Yeah. Goodness. 600 names to pick from here. And the first winner is Dave. All right. Dave C. Who is Dave C. here? Right there. I'm not kidding. I'm joking. Yeah. Okay. Dave, yeah. Dave's going to live to regret that, so. Nancy. All right. Good. Okay. Fantastic.
Stick around and probably even sign it.
Oh, yeah, right. But, so I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I've taken, it's just a few minutes after 8 here. I don't want to keep you any longer, but if you wanted to get a copy of the book, we do have them for $10. Great little book for yourself or someone you know who's trying to stay healthy. But I'll be here if you have questions. And again, thank you for coming out this evening. Look for our next seminar in the not too distant future. We may even have it in this exact same spot. So again, appreciate it, and we will see you guys later. Thank you for your time.